Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 15th at 5:30 p.m., and we are calling this regular meeting of the Wake County Board of Education to order. I want to welcome those of you that are watching at home and here with us in person as the Board of Education conducts its official business. I want to take a moment to highlight Board Policy 2310, which states Wake County Board of Education meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. The public is cordially invited to attend board meetings to observe the board as it conducts its official business. Persons who willfully interrupt, disrupt, or cause disturbances at an official meeting may be directed to leave by the presiding officer. Members of the audience should show respect for the speakers by refraining from loud comments or other disruptions. Disruptions by any person or persons of a public meeting will be subject to action in accordance with General Statute 143-318.17. We have all 9 board members present for the first time in a long time. Welcome, Ms. Waters. If you will all stand and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. We have some exciting celebrations, but first, some comments. Superintendent Moore?
Good evening. Congratulations to Orlando Bullock of Durant Road Middle School, who last week was named the 2022 WCPSS School Social Worker of the Year. A school social worker for 5 years, Mr. Bullock is described as a leader in the field and extremely resourceful. Like all social workers, Mr. Bullock is often the first school contact for families in transition, foster care, or crisis. He was recognized for connecting these students and families with needed resources and making them feel a part of the school community. A 22-year military veteran, Mr. Bullock also has drawn praise for his support of military families. He is the lead for our Military Connected Families program, and his school was one of 6 WCPSS schools recently named a Purple Star School for outstanding support of military families. Mr. Bullock, who is now eligible for the State Social Worker of the Year award, was honored last week during National School Social Work Week. Schools from all over our district paid tribute to their social workers for the many ways they serve and support families. School social workers have been described as professionals who shine a light on the need for mental health services, offer hope for students and for families who face various challenges, and then light the way for marginalized youth. Mr. Bullock says simply that his job is to give the voiceless a voice. My thanks to him and all of our other tireless school social workers for lifting up students and families who need it most. Congratulations to Fox Road Magnet Elementary 5th grade teacher Keisha McNeil, the most recent winner of the VEL Cares Award. North Carolina Central University's men's basketball coach and WCPSS alumnus Lavelle Moten created the award in 2018 as a way to honor teachers who go above and beyond to serve students. Coach Moten visited Ms. McNeil's classroom earlier this month to surprise her with the award. He also spoke to her students about their research projects on historically black colleges and universities. Ms. McNeil created the Fox Road STEP team and led them to championship. She also leads the school's Black History Month Quiz Bowl, summer school, before and after school tutoring program. Ms. McNeil is called Mom by many of her students because of the many ways she shows how much she cares for them. She attends their sporting events, puts congratulations signs in their yards for work well done, and often chooses to eat lunch with her students. She also helped to organize many parent engagement functions. Our strategic plan states that highly effective and dedicated teachers are essential to success for all students, and Ms. McNeil certainly fits that bill and is clearly deserving of this recognition. And I know that there are many more throughout our district just like her. To nominate a teacher for this award, visit wcpss.net/VELCares. In closing, I'd like to share this video depicting Engineering Week activities at Brentwood Magnet Elementary School. Many schools organized special projects last month to mark Engineering Week. but the week is particularly meaningful at Brentwood with its School of Engineering magnet theme. Every student at the school collaborates on grade-level appropriate engineering challenges. Take a look at the fun and engaging ways students employed the 4 C's, skills of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity.
Our goal with Engineering Week is to let kids be problem solvers, to connect to what they're learning in our curriculum with what an actual engineer does. So they are being civil engineers, aerospace engineers, they're using their math skills with distance and measurement and force and motion, and they also study circuitry. We are teaching kids to solve problems, which is a lifelong skill. So it's becoming hands-on, it's letting them take control of their learning and be a problem solver.
That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. I'm going to keep my comments short. I would like to, first of all, congratulate the Apex Friendship High School ladies basketball team for making it to the state finals. It came down to 1 point, and they did an amazing job this year. Ms. Cash and I got to go to the regional game and sat there refreshing Max Preps, trying and hoping, and so close, but very, very well done this season. And I'd like to thank the Cary Chamber for having a principals luncheon for all the principals that serve our schools in Cary. It was nice to take a moment to honor the instructional leaders of our schools, and I want to thank all of the principals here for all that you have done this year. And we are looking forward to celebrating our 20 Teacher of the Year semifinalists. So I'm going to end there so we can get to that celebration faster. Vice Chair Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. Again, it has been it's been a busy couple of weeks, but it's been a wonderful couple of weeks. I want to extend congratulations as well to Coach Shawan Robinson and the Panther Creek men's basketball team that made it all the way to the men's 4A championship game. So we ran into a bit of a buzzsaw there, but the team performed admirably, and we're bringing back almost everybody for next year, so we're going to run it back. Again, just more great things. I see Principal Kramer here. We had a good day at Leesville Road Middle School. I know some of my colleagues joined me last week just to visit Ms. Wilcox's social studies class and talk to some of the students. Good community events in Cary. As Chair Mahaffey had mentioned, the principals luncheon, work with our realtors and other professionals out there as well. We had wonderful pieces of gold celebration. I know some folks have had schools that have participated in that. It was just great to get everyone together for that ceremony again as well. I think I'll cut it short. We've got a lot of great folks to recognize tonight, so we'll move on.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you. Pieces of Gold is always my favorite, and that is one of my top benefits of being a school board member is I get to sit on the front row and see all the smiling faces and hear them very loud and get to dance when they're on the floor with them. So glad to be back in the building with Pieces of Gold as well. This is not on my list, but I have to say it because I have a lines-on view of John Travolta. I was at Queen of Hearts on Saturday, and so Dr. Ashburn was amazing. John Travolta. Voltage. So it was actually absolutely great to see not only our instructional leader of the building, but many of her educators on the floor dancing with their students, serenading their Queen of Hearts. And so I was quite surprised to see you show up on the floor close to the end. But indeed, it was a reminder of how much our students were glad to be back in the same place and to see every piece of your performing arts students show up and be amazingly beautiful, mask on and mask off, and so for me, it was my first time being in a building, seeing our students be able to engage at all those levels. Most of my reading was virtual, and I want to go on record and say certainly second graders are smarter than Ms. Johnson-Hostler. They asked me lots of questions, so it's great to actually be in a school building and see our students and families and friends and instructional leaders bust a move. So that speaks to volumes about who you are and how that school adores you, because they clapped you on. So that was not on my list, but I just caught you out of the corner of my eye. I also would like to acknowledge I'm not able to attend tomorrow, but I received an amazing invitation. And our new school board member, Ms. Waters, is going to go. The North Carolina Transit Workers are looking at creating a pilot program for opening up the career pipelines for transit workers to our schools and letting them know it's more than a bus operator, but there are multiple jobs. And so that's going to be hosted at Mary E. Phillips tomorrow. And while I'm sad I won't be there, I'm very glad to turn it right on over to the District 4 rep. And thank you, District 4, for inviting me in the stead of not having a board member. So I'm excited about potential partnerships of really opening up the career options to our students, and especially those who don't generally get pilots in their school like Mary E. Phillips. So certainly thank the North Carolina Transit Workers for reaching out and for making this possible for our students. And lastly, as we recognize our amazing Teacher of the Year finalist, I've also, in light of our teachers and the hard work that you all do, have received quite a few emails from our teachers talking about the sheer exhaustion and fatigue. And I see some of you shaking your head. And so I certainly would be remiss if I didn't sit at the table and say, not only do I hear and see you, but I'm also going to make sure we continue to talk about that. Actually, several people quoted me from 2020 when I talked about the need to create some respite and support services for educators. And so thank you for reminding me of my own words in 2020, and I will be sure to continue to reinvigorate my belief that we have to create supports for our educators as they also renegotiate how our students are showing up in buildings. So they're not just educating, but for many of them, they're reteaching how to socialize together again. And so thank you to my educators, my instructional leaders, and everyone in those buildings who truly are relearning the job as though it's your first day and as though our students, it's their first day of school. So I will hold true to my word and continue to talk about ways that we can support our educators in the building.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, and I'll try to be brief because I'm excited to celebrate our teachers as well. Wanted to, first of all, welcome Ms. Waters to our school board. I'm so excited to work with you. Your enthusiasm, your passion, and your knowledge of your district was evident throughout your interview and throughout your comments. So welcome, and I'm very excited to work with you. Heritage High School had their musical this past weekend, Frozen. Oh my gosh. So, and this is happening, as we know, across our county during our Student Achievement Committee meeting. Freddie Lee Heath was describing all of the different musicals and performances that are back. So if you have not had a chance to check out musicals, they are happening. I know Zebulon Middle School is having their first musical in quite some time coming up. I think theirs is in May. So we have lots of options to check them out. Lots of Winter Guard, indoor drums, lots of MPA, lots of stuff going on in our fine arts, and it's great to see all of that taking place again. And as many of you know, our magnet schools, a lot of them had welcomed their new families and had their the different fairs for different elective showcases, and lots of things like that are happening at our magnet schools. But I also wanted to say, if Wendell Middle School, and we have a teacher here from Wendell Middle School, they did an amazing job welcoming new 6th grade students and new families into their building, and it was just phenomenal. So I also wanted to acknowledge, as Ms. Johnson-Hostler just said, we know how exhausted you all are, from principals, teachers, everyone in those buildings, but to still see that enthusiasm, I know it's so hard, it is so exhausting, but it shows, your enthusiasm shows, your love for your career shows, and you know who benefits from that is our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Cash.
I also want to welcome Ms. Waters. Your interview was amazing, and we are so fortunate to have you on the board with us. So I'm looking forward to the next time. I also want to congratulate Mr. Bullock. I see Ms. Faircloth is here, and that's quite a accomplishment for him to get that. I also I feel like Charlie Brown at Christmas. I'm so excited to see so much happiness. It's just like we've been to Pieces of Gold. We've had the basketball tournaments. We have the Teacher of the Year finalists here and a lot of happy faces in the boardroom. So I just feel like Charlie Brown at Christmas. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I, too, want to welcome Ms. Waters to the board. Look forward to working with you. Congratulations. It was a great time to be at Pieces of Gold, always seeing the arts. Ms. Carter and I also attended the summer writing workshop unveiling of their published book. Ms. Moore was also there. Always exciting to see that. Thanks to the Office of Equity Affairs for running that Summer Writing Institute. It gives great voice to our students in a way that they don't always have. Both the exciting and somewhat sad comment that a couple of students made is, this isn't like school. To which I think all of us there sort of felt a little bit of that pain, because it should be like school. And too often we let school to be a little bit too mechanical, sitting in seats, as opposed to being that empowering place to find voice. Great writing, but also great reminder of what our schools need to be. Had the privilege of reading with elementary school students at both Apex Elementary and Combs Elementary. The reading is fun, but even more fun is the chance to just have discussion with the kids. And I usually go on for about 45 minutes or so with the kids, just asking all kinds of questions, science, politics, what they're learning, and so on. It's always a lot of fun, very curious, and the challenge is to inspire the kids. For whatever reason, this year, though, it kind of struck me because we hear so much about you got to get reading at third grade. And I happened to be in a third grade class for one of the discussions. And when I looked across, and when I reflected across the kids in the third grade class, third grade is where there's an incredible variation from the young, from the small to the tall, to the articulate, to the shy, and I think we have that in every classroom. But I actually think third grade is one of those times where you have one of the biggest dispersions in kids' ability and where they are in terms of maturity and the whole works. And so what do we do as a school system? We draw a line in the sand and say, third grade, it's got to be like this. And kids aren't like this. And I think, sort of that back-to-back with the Summer Writing Institute was just a reminder that we need to standards are important. Standardization is problematic. And I'm afraid that too often in a lot of the legislative issues and even school system policy, we push towards standardization as opposed to making sure we have standards, and those standards are to elevate every child to be who they can be. So just a reflection on that. We've started to get a bunch of emails, people requesting removal of class rank, and I just want to briefly mention that that's not something that's in our control. We addressed that. We tried to address that back when we went to the Latin honors. And just so people know that is in state statute. Class rank is governed by the Board of Governors of the university system. It's not something that the K-12 school system has any control over. So I just wanted to highlight that based on the several emails that are coming through. Finally, I think it's important for us to continue to pay attention to where we are in terms of COVID. Last week, there were 78 cases reported in Wake County Public Schools. If you look at the county-wide numbers, we're down to about 47. It's reporting 47 cases per 100,000 population. There's a slight challenge to that. I noted 2 weeks ago that there was some discrepancy in the numbers, and we went back and looked, and in fact, there was a bug in the reporting system on the Wake County Public Schools website. That has since been corrected. But what we still see is that there are more cases reported in the Wake County Public School system, particularly in the 5 to 9-year-olds, than there are reported in the disaggregated numbers to the North Carolina Health and Human Services website. So what that means, almost certainly, is that there's a lot of people doing home health testing, and that doesn't get reported to the state public health department. So while the formal public health report, like I said, is 47 cases per 100,000 population, based on the numbers, I suspect it's probably about 30% higher than that, where home health is just not reporting. The disaggregated by the state has us at 45.7 cases per 100,000 population overall. 53.9 for the 5 to 9-year-olds. The 5 to 9-year-olds remain the highest infectivity rate of all the cohorts reported. 10 to 14-year-olds are reported at 50.2 per 100,000. High schoolers at 20.8 per 100,000. And like I say, those are all probably significantly underreported. So we're not out of the woods. We're moving in the right direction. Everybody, continue to be careful, because we've got to get this thing under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carter?
Thank you, and I just want to say welcome to the table right next to me. And I guess I'm no longer the newest. I lost that title, so newest one. All right, so, but anyway, glad to have you. I want to congratulate all the semifinalists who are here tonight, and yes, I'm going to do my special shout out to one, Miss Stevenson Bennett, a former coworker at Davis Drive Middle School and an ECS classroom. It's just amazing is all I got to say. So just want to give that shout out. So I, too, at the Pieces of Gold, it was wonderful. And the gallery, too, and the for the Gifts of Gold was also amazing, seeing the different levels of talent, and because yet again another outlet, I feel like, for some of our students. And seeing the East, we had 2 D9 schools, East Cary Middle School and Cary High, were up on the stage. So it was a wonderful event. Lots of art stuff going on right now. And I, too, went to Combs Elementary, and I loved, it was Mrs. McDowell's Ponce's class, and again, just grateful they didn't ask my age. Got close, very close, but did not ask that. But a lot of other great questions, and about how long I've been reading. And then when they found out when I started reading, I saw some of them kind of going, oh, I was like, okay, they're getting close. But anyway, so it was great. And my tour guides at the school, I have to say, took me on a little detour, which thoroughly appreciated, to the chicken coop, okay? Because I love farm animals, so, So it was just, it was amazing. They were so proud to show me the chickens, and their garden. And then, like Mr. Haggerty mentioned, Mrs. Wilcox class at Leesville Road Middle School, enjoyed being back in a middle school and having middle schoolers ask me questions that really make you sometimes stop. They were great questions, and a great group of kids, and really appreciate that opportunity. And the Writing Institute, I was going to mention that as well, and the artist that was there, they actually did the cover. And I wasn't aware until I already had, because we got our books autographed, and I'm keeping mine just in case. And I got 2. I got one for my daughter as well. But it was great to meet the students and hear about some of their likes and dislikes. And, often I know, spelling is important and grammar is important. But having a chance for students to be heard and felt accepted and felt included is very important, and that is something I feel like that program really takes to heart, and just a great event. So congratulations to those students who are now in print. And then Cary High School had their Little Shop of Horrors musical, which was fantastic. I was like, oh, I know all these songs. Is that dating me? But the students just did awesome. Orchestra crew, excuse me, not the orchestra crew, the orchestra crew, yes, pit. I always say crew, but it's pit. I'll try to get it right. I apologize. And Mrs. McCormick, the director, always just a fabulous job there. And then I went to Salem Middle School. So another musical, Beauty and the Beast Jr., and that was fantastic as well. Packed house. They sold out all 3 nights. So it was great to see all the community support for those students. And then lastly, I went to my first ever Navy Junior ROTC competition, and that was also at Cary High because that's our only, Wake County's only Navy Junior ROTC program, and it was a Cary Classic drill and field event. And wow is all I have to say, because it rained, as y'all know, it was Saturday, so it was supposed to be outside on the football field, you know, a lot easier to run and organize because it's all there. You get all the judges and just go. Well, then they had to reorganize. It was, you know, auxiliary gym, the parking lot, divided up. I mean, it was a lot, and it was amazing to see the cadets really organizing and showing the other students from the other schools how to get there, making sure all the judges were there, and getting all that organized. And then for me, just to learn more about what's that like and what's part of that event and what does that entail, and just being able to see that, learn more about their program. And they actually qualified for nationals and are going to nationals in just towards the end of this month. So I just want to shout out that program as well, and just really thank all of our staff, our families, our community members who support all the above items that I mentioned, because like I've said many a times, these are great outlets for our students, and the support is just we're very fortunate to have such great support across the board, so that these students, because for many of them, this connects them to our academics. And so it is key to keep these programs going and just fully supported. So I think that's it, other than my reminder to everyone that I'll have a Board Advisory Council meeting on March 31st at 6 p.m. And it will be virtual, and the link should be available soon. If it's not already up on the board calendar, it will be going up shortly because that was just provided earlier today. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chairman Happy, and welcome, Ms. Waters. It's good to be here with you. Looking forward to our work together. And also enjoyed going to Leesville Middle School. It was wonderful to be with your students, and they did ask really great questions, and it gave me time to reflect on the last 2 years and get that feedback from them too, which was very useful and wonderful. And just a continued thanks and gratitude to all our educators, all our students for the work that y'all are doing this year. Cannot express that enough. And Pieces of Gold was a great celebration, being with Wake Ed Partnership supporters, with the United Arts Council of Wake County. So grateful for those partnerships, and grateful for the honoring of Liz Grimes-Dressler, such a veteran of Wake County schools. She has given so much to our arts programs. It was wonderful to lift her up and honor her that night. So join all of this board in celebrating her career and her life here in Wake County. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Waters.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, and thank you to everyone for your gracious and warm welcome. It feels really great to be official and to sit in the seat for District 4, so I'm looking forward to getting to work. And I thank Ms. Johnson-Hostler for affording me my very first opportunity to visit a school. Tomorrow I'll be at Mary E. Phillips, and so looking forward to that. And I am the mom of a preschooler and a sixth grader in the district, so I know the amazing work that teachers are doing. So this is extremely special to be sworn in today and to see all of you. So very excited, and looking forward to the work that is ahead. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. We are looking forward to working with you as well. With that, we need approval of our meeting agenda. We have 2 amendments. The first is to move from consent to action, academic advancement, summer remediation and test re-administration plan for summer 2022, and to pull from the consent agenda to be added at a later date the budget amendments and transfers for 2021-22. Do I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda with those amendments?
So, Chair Mahaffey, I would move to amend the agenda with those amendments. I did want to ask, though, if I could add another. I was going to make this as a public comment, but to cut time short, I had an announcement from North Carolina School Boards Association. I'd like to just add at the end of our meeting before closed session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or would that be an information item?
We could do it as an information item if you'd like.
Okay. We don't have a précis for that. Ms. Allen, do you want to add that as part of your board comments? Why don't we do that?
I'll just do the
Rather
extended
than-
comments at the end of the meeting.
No, I mean, why don't you do that right now?
I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't mean to
I
delay.
support it that way as well.
As you know, I'm on the board of directors of the North Carolina School Boards Association, and several of you are also aware that the School Boards Association has announced that it is terminating its membership in the National School Boards Association. Well, just last month, as a big new development, there's a new organization that is forming called the Consortium of State School Board Associations, and the North Carolina members have voted to become a founding state association member, which will have different rights in terms of organization, developing the Constitution and bylaws for the group. And so a whole new organization is forming with a lot of the leadership here in North Carolina. And so we'll sort of be getting in on the ground level of that. I have additional information that I can send you about it, but in case you saw anything about it on the news, in case you had any questions, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew about it. And I'm happy to provide more information at the appropriate time.
Thank you. With that, we need a motion to approve the meeting agenda with the aforementioned amendments.
Chair Mahaffey, I will put the suggested amendment forward with the amendments so suggested.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of, or any discussion in these changes? Okay. All in favor of moving, or all in favor of approving the meeting agenda with one item moving from consent to action and the other being pulled entirely, signify by a sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, the meeting agenda is approved. Board members, if you would hit the House button so that when Ms. Allen says so we are ready for those changes. And with that, we're moving on to our next item in the agenda, which we're all very excited about, which is to celebrate our Teacher of the Year semifinalists. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Moore and Lori Rutherford from HR and Dr. Anthony Matillo from HR. AJ Matillo. What do you go by these days?
AJ, Ms. Mayor.
AJ, all right. I'm just making sure.
Yeah. Good evening, Chairman Mahaffey, members of the board, Superintendent Moore. I want to start by thanking you for your cooperation this evening. All of our Teachers of the Year were asking about what time they would be recognized. We took a guess and said about 6 o'clock, and we're pretty close to that, so thank you all for that. But it is my pleasure to bring to you this evening the Wake County Public School System 2021-22 Teacher of the Year semifinalists. As a reminder, all Teacher of the Year candidates are selected by their peers at individual schools, and each school-level Teacher of the Year then submits a portfolio and a video to highlight their work and philosophy around teaching. Selection committees have reviewed these portfolios and videos to narrow the field to this outstanding group of 20 educators. Next, scores from the portfolios, videos, and a site visit will be used to select the 10 Teacher of the Year finalists. Finalists will appear before an interview committee next month, and then the district's Teacher of the Year winner will be named during a celebration in May with all the Teachers of the Year from across the district. So in addition to being recognized tonight, they were also excited to receive a Chromebook from Applied Data Technologies. This is the 4th year that Applied Data Technologies has made this generous donation to honor our educators, and we're certainly grateful for their support and partnership. So at this time, I'd like to recognize our semifinalists and call each of them up. When I call your name, please come forward and remain standing at the front until all recipients have been recognized. Cindy Alala, kindergarten, Willow Springs Elementary. George Barlich, 9th grade English, Enloe Magnet High. Holly Burke, kindergarten, Scotts Ridge Elementary. Maggie Childress, 7th grade ELA and Social Studies, Alston Ridge Middle. Jamie Gray, 1st grade, Hortons Creek Elementary. Sorry, y'all, I'm a former high school principal, so I'm used to the graduation.
This is graduation pace.
I'm going to slow it down for a minute. Now I got to make sure we're on Richard Harris, right? Richard Harris, Career and Technical Education, Leesville Road Middle. Jermaine Howell, 4th grade, Cedar Fork Elementary. Trina Motter, Healthful Living, Durant Road Middle. Julia Minch, Kindergarten, Sycamore Creek Elementary. Danielle McCaslin, 8th grade Science, Mills Park Middle. Lori Newhouse, 1st grade, Dillard Drive, Magnet Elementary. Caroline Olson, Special Education, Extended Content Standards, Broughton Magnet High.
Yes, Caroline. Go Cats.
Cindy Parker, Physical Education, Yates Mill Elementary. Lauren Parker, 6th grade Social Studies, Wendell Middle. Hannah Powell, 6th grade Science, Oberlin Road Middle. Kristen Shable, 2nd grade, Buckhorn Creek Elementary. Brandon Surace, 6th grade Social Studies, East Millbrook Middle.
Woo! Goes to the race.
You know, Dr. Ashburn, it's like graduation. When one starts, the next one goes on. Yeah. Aaron Stevenson Bennett, Special Education, Extended Content Standards, Davis Drive Middle. Kalyani Tade, Science, Vernon Malone College and Career Academy. Joanne Vaughn, 2nd grade, Wiley Magnet Elementary. Y'all were very quiet. Let's give them all a round of applause. Members of the board, thank you for allowing me to take part in recognizing these outstanding educators this evening. Semifinalists, without kind of tripping on each other, would you just turn around and face our board for some additional acknowledgement as well?
First of all, congratulations for being a semifinalist in our Teacher of the Year. Not only did you take the time to create a portfolio, but you did that while taking care of your students, your families, hopefully yourselves as well during this time. It is incredible the work that you all do, and we can't thank you enough. We really can't. And I know this small little plaque and a Chromebook doesn't cover the amount of gratitude that we all feel for each one of you and all of your colleagues in our district, because this is hard work in a normal year, and continuing to show up for your students, for your colleagues, for your families, your school families, and your own families is, I don't have the words, but thank you. And we are excited to take the time to celebrate all of you. And we look forward, Lori Rutherford, to our Teacher of the Year celebration coming up to celebrate you further. So thank you. Superintendent Moore?
My very first day on the job, I made a comment about the fact that the way I felt about being the superintendent was that I wanted to honor on the very first day on the job the fact that what I call the magic does not happen in the superintendent's office. It happens in 10,000 classrooms every day. And so thank you for the magic, knowing that the magic is hard work, sweat and tears, frustration, affirmation, joy, challenge, and all of those other things, and that you bring it every day. So thank you for the magic.
You are all welcome to stay, but you are also welcome to leave if you would like to go out and celebrate or just go home and put your feet up. We'll take a brief pause, so folks that would like to go may do so.
Everybody walks. No, you don't. Keep coming.
Okay. Thank you. Board members, if you would hit that house button and refresh your agenda. Everything is in place. Thank you, Ms. Allen. And we will move forward with our second information update, which is our information item, which is our superintendent's update. Superintendent Moore.
Thank you again. So quickly, I'm just going to go over the 4 items that were covered during our work session today. The first item on our agenda for work session was some additional time with our folks with RTI to continue the work around our strategic plan update and planning for the next version of our strategic plan. There were some summary comments that were made around some wording changes, some energy around some places in the plan and the work and the mission and vision that was done last time around, and some next steps around how we will engage community and other stakeholder groups to begin getting feedback on some specific questions, and then continuing to bring that back on a monthly basis to the board. Second item on the work session was an update of the virtual academy. We gave information basically around how we got to the virtual academy, what the numbers have looked like from last year to this year, and where we are currently this semester, as the number of students that are in-person instruction is over 95%, and we're happy to see our kids back in the classroom. The current virtual academy, as was messaged earlier today, will sunset at the end of this school year, as it is not permitted in its current form based on legislation based on Senate Bill 654. We also had another item on the 22-23 instructional calendars for our early college programs. Later on tonight, you have on the board action agenda 23-24 calendars for traditional multi-track year-round and modified schools. This is 22-23 this August for our early college calendars. It was an information item. It'll come back as an action item later on next month for the board. These calendars always come much later because we have to wait for our university and community college partners to set their instructional calendar, which they don't do until much later. So we adopt those in concert with their work. And the last item on the work session today was another update to the board, as we have been providing for over a year now, on the use of the ESSER funds and the pandemic relief funds. As you saw today, we've changed the format a little bit to make it a little more user-friendly and understandable in terms of how those dollars have been allocated, what's already been spent, what's still there, and how it's been committed. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. We will now move on to public comment. Public comment is accepted in video, written, and in-person formats. Members of the public are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, however, speakers are encouraged to refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for public comment settings. Concerns related to personnel issues may be addressed through the applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Speakers, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern, but should refrain from discussing confidential student information. Concerns related to confidential student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. We have 14 written comments and 2 video comments from members of the public. We have 3 on the topic of books, 2 comments on class rank, 2 on accommodations for medically high-risk students, and 7 others, including instruction in schools, support of educators, community service requirements for students, background checks on parents, appreciation for Board of Education, opposition of masks, and support of masks. For those of you that are here in person, during public comment, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. A yellow light will illuminate at the podium when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time, and a red light will signal that your time is up. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time. Any materials you wish to share with the board should be handed to the board attorney, either before or after your comments. Our first speaker is Chad Stahl.
There's some faces on the board. That's nice. Welcome back, faces. Former Wake County middle school teacher charged with indecent liberties with a child. This is a little strange because I think that not too long ago, right, this board voted and said, no, hey, we should have sexually guiding material in schools to help teach our younglings how to have sex with adults, right? And you want those in there. And then you have former Wake County middle school teacher charged with indecent liberties with a child. How old are middle school students again? Are they like above the statutory limit even? I don't think so, right? They're what, like 11, 12, 13? Is that the age that you feel is appropriate to teach children how to engage with adults? Is that this board's, you don't think they should learn how to read, but you think they should be able to have some type of sexual intercourse with each other or with adults? That's interesting. I don't understand it, but I guess that's just who you guys are. And I'm also super excited that the sociopath that wants to groom 2-year-olds for masking, I guess he's in timeout now. I think that's a good idea that was a rough patch also to listen to and be a part of. Whenever I have these moments, right, I met a single young black mom a couple of weeks ago, and that demographic is probably one of the most discriminated against demographics that there is. And this girl is working her butt off, right? She has a child that's in like the kindergarten age that has to have hearing aids, right? Was stuck with the option over the last year, could not hear in school because the mask and the hearing aids, they didn't work together. Had an IEP, that was ignored. She wasn't supported. And this is the most discriminated against demographic probably in our country. And she found no support from the school system to help her. So when you guys, you get on this equity bandwagon, and I just wonder, what are you really trying to achieve? I tried to FOIA request exemptions, right? I'm sure you're all aware of it. 6,000 pages of parents, of you discussing with each other, with parents, with principals, with teachers, how to not honor those types of exemptions. I know Daddy Cooper said that it's okay, you can take your masks off now, it's all right. I know, I get it. But parents are not gonna forget. I'm not gonna forgive. You didn't allow my child to go to school. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Russell Brackley Lichtenstein.
Brackley.
Thank you.
My name is Russell Lichtenstein. I am in District 8. It's a district that is constantly forgot about when it comes to busing. I've reached out to my district representative today, as well as my principal. My son's route has been canceled about 4 or 5 times in the past 2 weeks. Yesterday, not until I picked him up last night did I find out that he did not have a ride to school. Nor did I get any sort of indication that he was not picked up at school. So I reached out to the principal, and guess what? Talk to the board. Well, the board never answers me. Only I've had conversations with one person. My district member never responds to me. So it's very frustrating, and it's very dangerous for my son to be outside. Thank God he's got a phone. Thank God he's as big as I am, but he's only 14 years old. God forbid it's my daughter or anyone else's daughter. So, we finally get masks off. I haven't been here since that, and then now I've got to worry about this. And then I also hear that 2 of the board members sanctioned pornography in one of our high schools. So that's good to know. So I'm at a loss. I've tried everything I can to get through to folks. As a parent, it is mind-numbing, frankly, to be a taxpayer, be essentially, your bosses, in a sense, and get zero collaboration. You all had a golden opportunity, I thought, 2 years ago when this pandemic started, and chose a path that did not include us where you could have, and we probably could have been a lot better off where we are now. It's my understanding there is lots and lots and lots of money out there, yet my son has to walk home 4 times in the past week, or I, as a working adult or working parent, just like their mother, have to leave work every day to go pick him up and wonder where he is. I don't know if you guys know that. In addition, I see these poor kids standing by themselves at a bus stop with a mask on. Is that the intent of the recommendation that you all suggested? I don't think so. So please consider that, and do what you got to do. Get some people in these bus driver seats. There is no excuse. Prior to these apps and notifications, how did you handle it before? I think maybe a teacher or the principal would get their rear end in the bus and do what has to be done. It's not happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Daniel Grant King. No. Ruth Willenborg.
Hi. In May 2016, the Wake County School Board unanimously approved the Latin Honors tiered approach to recognition, eliminating the naming of valedictorian. To quote Superintendent Benton, "We have heard from many, many schools that the competition has become very unhealthy. Their choice of courses was being guided by their GPA and not their future education plans. Latin Honors did not solve these problems. You needed to remove class rank. Many of us thought you did. Every similarly competitive school system in the country has removed class rank. Less than 25% of students applying to elite schools like Caltech, Cornell, and Brown submit ranks. Wake County claims state law prohibits you from removing class rank. Section 116.143.1 actually defines Institute of Higher Education as any of the constituent institutions of the University of North Carolina. Therefore, we are requesting the option for the class of 2023 to remove class rank for out-of-state schools and private universities, followed by full removal in 2024. Class rank is the first question in Common App. It's a hard cutoff for scholarships. 41% of the juniors at Green Level High School are AIG. 41% does not fit in 10%. The math doesn't work. Summa cum laude, magna cum laude students are required to enter ranks in the bottom 50%. This is harmful. Additionally, the ranks the students are being forced to submit are unfair and they're inaccurate. Some of the students were denied AP and honors courses. This is especially true when we split the schools from the pandemic with Plan ABC and Virtual Academy. The students who knew there was a class rank, they picked their courses for GPA, whereas the others, they chose a course like biomedical technology, or they pursued their interest in arts. The students who chose PC19 are being directly compared with the students who kept their numeric grades. PC19, with 8 AP courses, will rank ahead of 11 AP courses. Class rank competition escalates. The students are now cramming in Wake Tech courses to get ahead. High school academic performance should not be measured by summer courses at Wake Tech. So you guys are intentionally printing useless and damaging data. You're deliberately harming the students of Wake County by not addressing these issues. Please get the policies fixed at whatever level you need to. Our kids need to be able to compete for admissions and scholarships based on their in-class performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anna Routh.
Good evening. My name is Anna Ruth, and I'm a senior at Cary High School. 2 weeks ago, my peers spoke out against the movement to ban books, specifically concerning the challenges against Lawn Boy and Out of Darkness. To the school board and the decision committee, I appreciate and I applaud you for the decision that has been made in the past week to allow Lawn Boy to remain in school libraries. This is a huge step in the right direction to protect our libraries and to allow young people to see themselves in their literature. For the remainder of my time, I'd like to address the concerned parents who support the banning of books in schools. The harsh reality, as someone who's experienced middle school not too long ago, is that regardless of a couple of books being removed from libraries, preteens are going to be exposed to the real world as a part of growing up, and that includes sexual content. This is not something that can be prevented no matter how many books are torn off the shelves or how many discriminatory laws are passed. What can be controlled, and what I advise parents to invest more of their time and energy into, is fostering a safe environment for their children to communicate with them as they come of age. Kids will either learn about sex and be able to communicate with and be able to seek out help and guidance comfortably, or they'll be unable to talk to anyone if they're in danger, whether that be in an abusive relationship or other toxic situations, because they've been raised to keep quiet. I advise parents to reconsider what they consider to be protecting their children. If you're honestly more concerned about the pornography that is present in young adult books more than the criticism of the status quo and representing lives that differ from what is comfortable to you, you'll find that you are fighting a losing battle. I can assure you that no child turns to books if pornography is what they're in search of, and finding out if a book is sexually explicit is only one Google search away. But I know that parents challenging books aren't ignorant of the fact that every book they challenge includes people of color or LGBTQ characters. To ban books with these themes that might be a bit uncomfortable is to take away the opportunity of growth for someone else's child, not only yours. I urge you, please don't prevent another child from reading these books if they really need them to feel supported and protected. I'm not a parent, I'm only a daughter. I can't tell you how to parent, no more than you should tell me what to read. I can only offer my words of advice as someone who is actually affected by the books that are being banned in my libraries, and as someone who knows what it's like to grow up in today's world. The bottom line is we are not forcing anyone to read books, but you are attempting to force hundreds of students to not read books that hold value. You may permit or prohibit the books that are read in your household, but not in school libraries. You criticize myself and my peers, claim that we aren't qualified and educated enough to speak. The fact remains that all of us chose to be here. The time we spent writing and rehearsing our speeches is our own, and as are our words and our sentiments. We've been criticized because some adults can't understand why teenagers care because they didn't when they were our age. It is obvious that we care, and it should be obvious why. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alexis Altschuler.
Hi, my name is Alexis Altschuler, and I'm a senior at Cary High School, also here with Idea Club. So I'm mixed race. I'm biracial. My mom is Taiwanese and my father is white. Representation for me in books, while lacking, has not degraded the importance of books in my life. From an early age, I gravitated towards books about animals rather than people because the characters in these stories were not me. How depressing that a child feels more connected to animals than a human being. The majority of characters in the books I read were white. All the characters in my head white. The one book I read as a child that remotely approached being biracial was Harry Potter and the concept of half-bloods. Half-bloods being half Muggle, a disgraced race, and half wizard or witch. Not exactly painting being biracial in a positive light. As I grew older, I gravitated towards historical fiction because at the very least there was something real about these books. There was a person, not me, but someone. Being able to read different perspectives allowed me to observe how others overcame the discrimination they faced. It made me more humble, compassionate, and appreciative. Reading about others overcoming their struggles was the encouragement I needed to face my own demons. Each individual has their own struggles. Banning books limits the resources available to students and implies some tribulation should be censored. Books have always come alive to me. I can picture the characters' faces and their environment around them in astonishing detail, but I always stand apart, the observer. Occasionally, I gather shards of characters that connect with me to form a fragmented whole, my own Frankenstein monster. The result of not being able to relate to a character, especially pertaining to gender and race, leaves a person feeling empty. You feel isolated. You believe no one understands you, not even words on a page. You shut down, shut out the world. No other entity needs to close more doors for us, to trap us. We students are not caged birds that sing. Books can be the last support system a person has. If people will not listen to you, at least a book can speak to you. But if books continue to be challenged on the basis that they are not appropriate for children and even young adults, I ask you, do you know how supportive a book can be? Written words offer a unique flexibility of emotion that spoken words do not. They're not limited to a single emotion or judgment. Books are diverse mentors and friends. Do not limit me and my peers to an echo chamber of singularity by banning books. This is not Fahrenheit 451.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rowan Rustowitz.
Parents and people of Wake County, the idea of banning books infringes on the basic natural rights America was founded on. My name is Rowan. I'm a sophomore at Cary High, and ever since I was young, books were my entire world. I could explore new things and learn new ideas that our public school system was not open enough to teach because of parents and educators whose closed-minded beliefs affected us all. Books such as Genderqueer or Anti-Racist Baby are simply there to help us explore and learn. These books teach kids social issues that they might experience or witness in simple ways that they can understand. Discrimination is a common thing, whether it's talked about or not. As someone who has faced discrimination firsthand, I've learned that my best weapon is education. When my peers gave their speeches last meeting, grown adults were berating them online. They were saying that we were being groomed, we were defending pedophiles, being sensitive. They asked, why are we listening to teenagers? The answer to this question is simple. It's because we are the future. We are the people who are going to live in this world, and we are the ones who will be running it someday. We are the people who will create laws. We are the ones who will operate this world when we are older, but we cannot do this if information is kept from us. We cannot do this if our natural right, the right to knowledge, is kept from us. These books are not in our curriculum. These books are not being forced upon our children. These books are just here existing, all revolving around the topics of race, gender, or sexual orientation, ranging from a simple explanation about how racism is bred, not born, to a novel on gender identity and the importance of learning about it. As a member of the LGBTQ community, seeing people believe that our community is full of pedophiles not only hurts, but it angers me. It shows me that people don't have the time or resources to educate themselves on the fact that this is just a stereotype that was created to stigmatize us. We are people just like everyone else in this room. We are people who love, we are people who learn, and we are people who protect our community. We are no less human than anyone else in this room. My classmates of color are no less human than anyone else in this room, and we all deserve an equal opportunity to learn about the things that surround us in this world. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, banning books about sexuality isn't protecting our youth. It is detrimental by sheltering them from things that they are bound to experience. Keeping our children safe means teaching them that not everyone sees the same opportunities in life because of the deep-rooted racism and sexism within our school systems. It is teaching them that while we are all different in one way or another, be it our skin color, our gender, or our sexual orientation, none of us deserve to be berated or hurt. We all deserve the right to knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Julie Page.
I like to see your faces. Hello. Many of us in this room attended a one-time movie showing last night. The name of the movie was Whose Children Are They? It was eye-opening, to say the very least. Many topics in the movie are currently present in Wake County schools today. The movie even mentioned our school system. Not shocked after all that I've seen and heard over the past 2 years. To all the parents watching and listening, I ask you, whose children are they? The obvious answer is that they belong to the parents, not the school system, not the government, not the fake teacher unions. They belong to we, the parents. I also ask you this, who currently controls the schools and what ideology do they follow? Consider the following communist goals read into the congressional record in 1963. Number 17, get control of the schools, soften the curriculum, get control of teacher associations. Number 24, eliminate laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech. Number 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books. Number 29, discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate and old-fashioned. Number 41, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Over the years, the so-called union, the NCAE, has been marching towards an influential and powerful parent-type role in the school system. The members present the illusion of caring about children, teachers, and other school workers. However, they are really a political action committee. Follow the money. Is education a political issue? It shouldn't be, but it is for this organization. If you are a parent or grandparent, join a local nonpartisan parental rights advocacy group such as Moms for Liberty of Wake County. Go to meetings, engage with like-minded community members, get to know your school board members and candidates, county commissioners, and legislators. If you are an educator or a social worker, abandon the NCAE and join the Carolina Teacher Alliance instead. This association actually cares about mental health, educator pay, student success, and parent involvement. The dues are much less per year, the benefits are plentiful, and the leader, Amy Marshall, is an amazing advocate. WCPSS Policy 2541 says that parents and schools work together as partners to promote increased student achievement. We do not co-parent with the government. We partner with the school system on academics. When we say division, we mean math, not mask, vaccine, and social issues. Parents, boldly and proudly stand up and speak out for your children.
Our next speaker is Renee Seckel.
Good evening. First, welcome, Ms. Waters. I'm glad to have you here. Second, I want to thank this board for upholding the right of students to read books in their schools and for standing against censorship, well, most of you. I wondered a lot what to say today. I'm just going to boil it down to two things. Number one is we are still in a pandemic, and I am as happy as anybody else that the numbers seem to be going down and going down consistently. But I'm hearing over and over again from parents of children who have health issues, who have disabilities, who have vulnerable family members, who are feeling scared and alone right now. And they're feeling like they have no support and no choices and nothing to do at this point. We have students who have been told, one of my kids' schools sent an email saying, please don't ask us to help you keep your kids safe. We're not going to do it. Just don't ask. It's not worthwhile. They literally said, do not ask us to accommodate your child's wish to be safe. I beg of you right now, there's no excuse of S-173 anymore. That's been vetoed, and the veto has been upheld. I know it lurks in the Rules Committee, but for now it's dead. You can allow students who are vulnerable, who choose to mask, but who also fear bringing COVID home in extremely vulnerable situations, you can accommodate them. They shouldn't have to go on home hospital, which, as we all know, is a direly inadequate system that's meant to be a last resort, not a, oh well, just go on home hospital. You can't be kicking kids out of the school system because they don't feel safe. That's not fair. And one last note I'd like to make, although she left, about the Carolina Teachers Association. In case anybody's watching online, you might be interested to know that when that organization reached out to the state to get every single teacher's email address so that they could spam their inboxes, they said that the purpose of the association was not to support teachers. They said that the purpose of the Carolina Teachers Association was to get Republicans elected to this Wake County School Board. It's a matter of public record. You can go ahead and find it for yourself. Just thought anybody out there in internet land would be interested to hear, since we got an advertisement today. Thanks all. Bye.
Our next speaker is Ferris Saris. Faris. I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, and my apologies. No. Carrie Bly.
Hello again. That's what I want on this board. I want students like that on your board. Ms. Waters, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Carrie Bly, and my husband and I have been coming to this room since April 2nd of 2019. We've delivered 49 speeches, and when the public wasn't allowed in here, we submitted 13 virtual speeches and 2 emails. We've been asking for help for 1,078 days. And all we're asking for is visual math learning content for middle and high schools students. That's it, because the workbooks you provide in the district curriculum are only filled with question and no learning content. And I'd like to clear the air about one thing, since I heard a couple mention this. You seem to be labeling Pete and I as anti-Common Core because I mention Common Core a lot. And I do that because I'm searching for a causation for why you chose these crazy curriculums. And maybe we're not anti-Common Core. Maybe we're just parents that are against one voice and one opinion and one ring to rule them all. Because I don't think that anyone should follow any initiative blindly. That's not wise. You said you picked these curriculums because they were vetted by IMET, EQUIP, they were highly recommended by Ed Reports, and you did a quality curriculum audit by TNTP. So this is the first of 3 speeches Pete and I will give as a history lesson. You adopted Common Core in 2010, and people started to complain because there was no curriculum. To fix that, the authors of the standards wrote 2 very extremely important documents that are often overlooked, called the K-8 Publishers Criteria and the High School Publishers Criteria for the Common Core State Standards of Mathematics. Even after that, people didn't understand the standards and curriculum wasn't being written. So they created checklist from those publishers' criteria as something kind of a simple, stupid way to follow. They created IMET for textbooks and EQUIP for lessons. After that, kids were still falling behind, and for a while they blamed teachers. And they tried to sell professional development programs to fix that. It's not the standards' fault, it's the teacher's fault. And at this time, a very, very small group of people met in California to form a math strategy group that would lead to the creation of Ed Reports, which I consider to be a kindergarten picture book, and it is based on IMET, EQUIP, and the Publisher's Guide. They're all 3 the same metric. And I ask questions such as, why should we listen to them? Who runs it? Where are they? Ed Reports is one of your criteria. It doesn't even have a phone number. Doesn't even have anyone you can contact. All they have is a creepy P.O. box in Durham, North Carolina.
Thank you, Ms. Bly. Tracy Taylor. Tracy Taylor. Okay, I believe that concludes public comment. Thank you to all folks who came out to speak, write, or submit a video. We're now moving on to our consent agenda. If we could get a motion to approve our consent agenda.
Chairman Haffey, I move approval of our consent agenda as amended.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second on our consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? We now move on to our first action item, which is bell schedule recommendations for the 2022-23 school year. And that will be presented by Mr. Robert Sneidmiller, our Senior Director of Transportation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Haffey, board members, Superintendent Moore. In accordance with Board Policy 3300, which is the school day and time for learning, bell schedules for the next year are to be approved by April 1. We presented these and proposed bell schedules to you at your March 1st work session. And in summary, we're proposing that all of the current bell schedules remain the same for school year 22-23, and we are bringing on 4 new schools. So the proposed bell schedule for the 4 new schools would be Apex Friendship Elementary School and Barton Pond Elementary School would be 9:15 to 3:45. Herbert Akins Middle School would be 8:15 to 3 o'clock. And the early college in Morrisville would be 7:25 to 2:30. These proposed bell schedules align with what we call our standard bell schedules for that level of school. And with that, staff requests board approval of the 2022-23 bell schedules.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sneidmiller. Before we get on to questions, Can we get a motion and a second to accept the bell schedule recommendations for the 2022-23 school year? Hot
Chairman
topic.
Haffey, Chairman Haffey, I move to make a motion to accept the recommended bell schedules for the 2022.
I second it.
23 school. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Scott and Ms. Cash. I'm sure we have some discussion. Mr. Sneidmiller?
Absolutely.
Vice Chair Haggerty? I'm just taking a guess here.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Mr. Sneidmiller, I appreciate all the work over the last couple of weeks since we've been talking about this. I know that I might have made your life a little more difficult with some of these questions and some of this work, but I appreciate you taking the time to work through these scenarios with me.
Sure.
So, as you know, I don't have any issues with the bell schedule proposed for the existing schools, but I question the bell schedule for the new school that's opening in my district, Barton Pond Elementary. And as you know, to fill Barton Pond, we're taking a large number of students from schools that had a 9:15 time, but we're also taking a large number of students from schools that had an 8:30 or an 8:30 start time as well. And so one of the things that I had asked you about was, I guess for some parents that have schedules, things that have set up a work hours and things to accommodate that earlier start time, being asked to move to 9:15. Would there be some way that we could look at a staggered time, or in cases where, with the new school opening, some parents have chosen to grandfather maybe an older child at their existing school to finish up 5th grade, but might have a new or a younger child starting that they wanted to go ahead and start at the school where they would continue to remain, through elementary school. Can you just talk to us and explain a little bit more about why we can't get like a compromise time between 8:30 and 9:15, or how that works with the tier schedule?
Yes, absolutely. I'll just start with, in general, we place new schools on a tier that basically would require the least number of buses to be added, especially during this time where we have such a severe bus driver shortage. And in the case of Barton Pond Elementary School, what we know is that students will pull from about 9 other elementary schools to Barton Pond Elementary School. So we looked at where these students were coming from, and about 2/3 of those students are actually coming from a school that's on a 3rd-tier schedule currently. And so our hope is to be able to move and reduce bus runs with that population moving from those schools to Barton Pond Elementary School and put Barton Pond on that 3rd-tier schedule. Moving those runs, we wouldn't have to add the buses in a time that we really don't feel like we can add buses. And looking at a bell schedule of like a staggered time, anything in between our standard tiers, basically results in having to add buses, because the buses that would serve Barton Pond are obviously busy doing something else, right? 2nd tier before 3rd tier, or if we move them in between 2nd and 3rd tier, it could even impact 3rd tier. So the most efficient way is to place a school on one of the 3 tiers and give us the bus run time that we need in between those tiers to fill buses, use buses efficiently and effectively. And again, we just look at, when we bring new schools on, for that best placement based on all the criteria given. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sneidmiller. I appreciate that. And I know we've heard from a lot of parents on this issue in the affected schools, some in support of the later time, some in support of the earlier time. Some of the stories that we've heard, at least to me, have been compelling, and I see a hardship this creates. Yeah. But when we talked about it, you talked about there might be some way that we could accommodate someone whose children, they have multiple children, but they're supposed to be at 2 different schools at 2 different times, and especially if it's a younger child, right, that they wouldn't want to leave at a bus stop unaccompanied. What can we do in some of those cases for those families, sure, or those parents?
Sure, good question. First, I want to be clear that the students in a family that has students split between the grandfathered student at their current school and then the younger sibling at Barton Pond, the Barton Pond student will have and be eligible for busing, because they live in the base attendance area. What we do for ineligible students, which would be the grandfathered student in this case, we allow parents to apply for transportation. And quite often, not always, but quite often, we're able to accommodate those requests by simply, especially third tier, maybe not in the morning, but the afternoon, we can make that the last stop on a run coming from their school, and we can accommodate their needs. So we look at everything, we work with the parents, and obviously we want to put students on buses. It builds our efficiency, our funding's built off of efficiency, and so, we'll look at everything we can to accommodate those students.
Okay, so I guess just my last question. I mean, again, I can yell about it and I can vote against it, but it's not going to get us any more school buses to make this happen. Yeah. But if we do have parents, and some have reached out to me, some at Sycamore Creek, some with grandfathered students that are split between schools, when could they find out about accommodations, or how could they, when would be the right time to contact you about some way to solve the issues they might be having?
Well, we talked about this in our shop, and this is a real concern, and we know that you've brought it to our attention. So what we normally do is we take these requests for ineligible riders 30 days after school starts. And that's to let our bus runs settle down and that sort of thing. But sometimes we do know prior to that. And I'd be willing to work with the principal individually at these schools and just, give me the student's name, let's take a look. And if we can accommodate them within that 30-day period, we would do that. So.
Okay. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the time that you've spent talking through these issues with me, and listening to all the different ideas that we've talked about. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Cash.
I appreciate that, too. I just want to be sure I heard that right. So if a child is grandfathered, they can apply for transportation?
Yes, ma'am.
I did not know that.
Yes,
okay, good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, in fact, any parent can apply for transportation if they don't have it. And again, we take a good look at it.
The what? They have to be eligible for that transportation.
It's in Mr. Snodmiller's interest to put every child on a bus that he can.
It is, yes.
Are there?
And to be clear, the policy states that. It's pretty clearly written in the policy that anybody can apply. The biggest issue is generally new stops are not created. So if there is a stop in the area, even if you're grandfathered or transfer, you've been able to apply for a very long time. So that's pretty well spelled out in the policy.
Thank you for clarifying for me, Dr. Martin.
Yeah.
I understand, but I do think that there probably aren't buses in that area, but because we are reassigned. So I just wanted to be sure I understand, because I think I've had these questions, and I was wrong. I did not know they could.
Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Snidemiller, before we continue, do you have an update on where you are with hiring and the incentives that you're offering for bus drivers? Are we able to retain who we have?
Well, we are, in conjunction with our HR department, we're holding bus driver sessions, information sessions, and early on in January, we saw a good turnout. That's kind of fizzling a little bit, but we've got some of those folks in the pipeline, and so we're optimistic about adding, but quite frankly, we're losing bus drivers. We continue to lose bus drivers as quickly as we can add. And that's through retirement, other jobs, just a gamut of things. So we're going to continue to press, and we do have an incentive out there, $1,200 for hiring bonus, and so we're seeing more activity, and that's a great thing. And so we hope that with the board-approved new rates, we can get more folks' attention, and we can continue to build. So fingers crossed.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
With that, are there any other questions, further discussion? All right, all those in favor of adopting the recommendations for the 2022-23 bell schedules, signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Only to draw the attention that we need more funding for our bus drivers so we can accommodate more routes. Nay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Snidemiller.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Our next update is the 2023-24 instructional calendar for traditional, modified, and year-round. Welcome back, Mr. Carrozza and Ms. Anderson-Powell.
Chairman Happy, members of the board, Superintendent Moore. Tonight, staff brings to you the 2023-2024 instructional calendars for traditional, modified, and year-round schools. The materials loaded in assembly are a copy of what was shared with you during the March 1st board work session. The calendars comply with General Statute 115C 84.2 and were created with the assistance of a calendar committee that included school, parent, and community partners. It was also facilitated by Ms. Tamani Anderson-Powell, who joins me this evening. Again, staff is seeking your approval tonight of the 2023-2024 instructional calendars for traditional, modified, and year-round schools. We welcome any questions you may have before voting this evening.
All right. Do we have a motion, Ms. Kushner? Oh, I thought I saw your hand go up. I'm sorry.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 instructional calendars for traditional, modified, and year-round.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson-Hostler and Ms. Kushner. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by a sign of aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, thank you very much.
And we will be bringing the materials that we presented during the work session today for approval at our next meeting.
All right, thank you. Moving on to policy. Board Policy 3460, graduation requirements, first reading. We have Mr. Drew Cuck, Assistant Superintendent for Academics.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, board members. Tonight we're bringing to you revisions to Policy 3460, graduation requirements for first reading. This policy was presented at the February 22nd, 2022 Policy Committee meeting. Revisions that you'll note reflect updates made by staff and the North Carolina School Boards Association and are focused on changes to policy language to make better connections with current policies and practices, as well as to make the policy more accessible and understandable for families and students. The revisions to this policy do not change graduation requirements and/or the general spirit of the policy as was previously written. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or share additional information.
Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, and I'd like to make a motion to approve revisions to Board Policy 3460, graduation requirements on first reading.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, as Mr. Cook outlined, this is to update our policy to make and align it with State School Board Association, highlighting dual enrollment. And I appreciate the fact that the high school planning guide is included in materials just so that parents can reference that and see for planning for their students. So thank you for having that in the materials, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by a sign of aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
Next up, Board Policy 3610, Counseling Program. This is first reading. Mr. Coe.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, board members. I'm actually going to be bringing forth our next two policies and introducing my staff. So we have Board Policy 3610, Counseling Program, which will be discussed and presented by Ms. Crystal Reardon, and then Board Policy 4125, Students Experiencing Homelessness, Students in Transition, will be presented by Mr. Michael Pesch.
Good to see you, Ms. Reardon.
Thank you. Mr. Coe, thank you. Chair Mahaffey. Members of the board and Superintendent Moore, thank you so much. This evening, we are presenting Board Policy 3610, Counseling Program, as a revised policy. These revisions reflect updates made by the North Carolina School Boards Association and Wake County Public School System staff. Updates were made largely for ease of readability of the policy language. These revisions were presented at the January 25th, 2022 and February 22nd, 2022 Policy Committee meetings. When given final board approval, this will replace current Policy 3610 Counseling Program.
Chair Mahaffey, I make the motion to approve revisions to Board Policy 3610, Counseling Program, for approval on first reading.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by a sign of aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Reardon.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
All
Mr.
right.
Pesh?
Mr. Pesh.
Good evening.
Good
Chair
evening.
Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm here to present to you the first reading of revised policy 4125, students experiencing homelessness, students in transition. Revisions reflect updates made by staff and the North Carolina School Boards Association. When given final board approval, it will replace the current version of this policy. It was reviewed at the January 25th and February 22nd policy committee meetings. Tonight, we request the board's approval for the first reading of revised policy 4125, students experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Ms. Kushner?
Chair Mahaffey, I move approval of revisions to Board Policy 4125, students experiencing homelessness, students in transition, for approval on first reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms.
And
Kushner?
I just wanted to highlight in particular that the policy changes do put into policy that we, our outreach and our explanations and our work with parents is clarified, and that there's more intention in how we work with our families in this policy. I appreciate that. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anything else? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you, Mr. Pesh.
Thank you.
Next up, Board Policy 6400, Goals of the Purchasing Function. Mr. Winters.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm here to present the first reading of Policy 6400, Goals of the Purchasing Function. This is a new policy created by the School Boards Association as part of their Policies to Lead the Schools manual. And as part of the Policy Migration Project, when given final approval, it will replace current Policy 8304, Vendor Relations. It was reviewed by the Policy Committee on February 22nd, and tonight we request the board's approval of first reading of 6400.
Thank you,
I will
Mr.
gladly answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey and Mr. Winters. Move approval of Board Policy 6400, Goals of the Purchasing Function, for approval on first reading, and we're entering the 6,000. Getting there.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All right. Any discussion? How long was this policy migration supposed to last? Just 2 years? 2 years. Yeah.
That was 8 years ago.
All
6
right.
years ago? 8 years ago. We're very intentional.
Yes, we're thorough and intentional, yes. All right. Thank you very much. All those in favor of adopting or passing policy 6400 on first reading, please signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Winters.
Okay.
Are you staying with us?
I am.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, just the length of time, our board policies still say associate superintendents. We no longer say, we don't have chiefs. That's how old our policies are. So I'll now offer the first reading of Policy 6401, Ethics and the Purchasing Function, similar to the previous policy. It's part of the Policy Migration Project, and it will replace 8304, Vendor Relations, and this was also reviewed February 22nd. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Mahaffey, I move approval of board policy revisions to ethics and the purchasing function, Board Policy 6401.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Scott?
Thank you. And I'm so sorry I did not bring this up earlier, and I'm not, I will support this first reading, but did just want to bring up a situation that might occur where you have a staff member who has a side business. Let's say they have a hot dog stand that they do, and another school would like to have a hot dog stand at their carnival. I don't know if this is, I know this is something that occurs, and I just wanted to put that out there, that maybe when this goes to R&P, or even just looking at some considerations moving forward, that could be considered. And I just wanted to share that because there was an example of that happening recently.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Scott. Vice Chair Hagerty.
Thank you. And this is just a question for council. Mr. Blumberg, you've advised us before about new state guidance concerning board members and participation on nonprofit boards in a leadership role, and the conflicts that can occur if matters come before us where there's a contract between the district and the board. Could you refresh us on that policy, and does that have any connection to the policy we're adopting today?
Thank you. I don't believe it's directly related to this policy, but yes, the refresher is that you would want to just make sure it's a disclosure requirement, that if you're on a nonprofit and there's any potential contract between the school board and that nonprofit, that if you are a director or a board member or an officer of that nonprofit, you'd want to disclose that, then not vote, and the board would be able to proceed on its own with that to assess the merits independently of that. So, but don't see that as having an immediate and direct effect on this. I can look at that further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or discussion points? Hearing none, all those in favor of passing Board Policy 6401 on first reading, please signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Winters. Moving on to academic advancement. Senate Bill 654, local face covering policy. Mr. Coe?
Good evening again, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and board members. Per Senate Bill 654, requiring all public school units to adopt a policy regarding the use of face coverings by employees and students for the 21-22 school year, and the bill's requirement for the governing body of public school units to vote at least once a month on whether the face covering policy should be modified. We bring to you a recommendation to continue our current mask guidance as approved by the board on February 22nd in alignment with the recommendations of state and local health officials. Our board voted to lift its COVID-19 mask mandate for athletics effective immediately, for all other extracurricular activities on February 25th, and for the school system in general on March 7th, subject to any applicable law. The guidance approved by the board indicates that masks will be recommended but not required. And in your board materials and assembly, we provided you 2 slides, and as the detailed information is there in assembly for you, I'll just provide a quick summary of both slides. The first slide reviews our previous health metrics as of March 9th, 2022, which are no longer as relevant as the CDC has updated guidance for community levels of COVID-19. However, we will continue to monitor to stay up to date on COVID-19 information for our county. The second slide reviews the updated CDC guidance for community levels of COVID-19 for your reference, and the updated CDC guidance uses the following metrics: new cases per 100,000 over a 7-day average, new COVID-19 hospital admissions per 100,000 over a 7-day total, and percent of staff inpatient beds occupied by COVID-19 patients over a 7-day average. And as of today's date, March 15th, our community level of COVID-19 is indicated as low per CDC. So with this context, staff recommends continuing the current mask guidance as approved by the board on February 22nd, 2022.
All right, thank you, Mr. Coe. Before moving on to discussion, do we have a motion and a second?
Madam Chair, I've moved to approve staff's recommendation to continue their guidance as stated by Mr. Coe to fulfill Senate Bill 654, local face covering policy.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions from board members? Dr. Martin?
I will just briefly note that, and I've shared my concern based on the current data, but I also do not plan to stand in the way. I will be abstaining from this vote, knowing full well what an abstention means, but to make a point, I will be abstaining.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Ms. Cash?
I thought the NC toolkit changed the wording of the masking, and we were going to possibly follow that directly. Superintendent Moore?
I think that is a conversation for the full board to have. It is correct that in the NCDHHS toolkit, the language that is there speaks directly to districts should make masks voluntary and does not use the recommended but required language that was what the board approved on the February 22nd. So that would be something that is certainly a discussion point.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be a discussion or a need for an amendment in order to change that language. Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, with Dr. Martin's abstention noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to summer remediation and test administration plan, summer 22, this was moved from consent to action. We have Mr. Drew Cook coming back and Dr. McMillan. Thank you.
Good evening again, everyone. Dr. McMillan and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you an overview of district plans for remediation and test readministration this summer. This item outlines district plans to offer remediation opportunities immediately following the end of the 2021-22 school year, the current school year, for students who earn a passing grade in a course or subject involving an end-of-course or end-of-grade test, but who fail to score proficient on that test. NCDPI policy allows for the readministration of those tests for those students following a remediation program which adheres to certain criteria. If students score proficient on that readministration, then that score will replace their initial non-proficient score. We do want to make note of the fact that this opportunity for students will be provided completely separate and apart from other summer learning program plans that are currently being finalized. I think, as was referenced in the finance meeting earlier this afternoon, we do plan to bring an update to the board in the next month or so with details on 2022 summer learning structures. Ms. Cash, we made note of your request for some additional data. I think it'll be relevant in that conversation to look back at what we did last summer and talk about how some of that data informs decision-making for programming moving forward. This retesting plan, though, has been designed to comply with NCDPI criteria and will be submitted to NCDPI for their approval pending board approval, which we are requesting this evening. With that overview, I'll turn it over to Brad to walk through a few more of the details.
Thank you, Drew. Some of you may recall that we've taken advantage of this policy opportunity in the past, in the years leading up to the pandemic. It began with just a couple of schools at first, and then was a strategy used by many of our restart schools in the years leading up to the pandemic, in part because of some funding flexibility that they had, that they were able to take advantage of it in the way that some other schools might not have been able to do so easily. And then, of course, in 2020, it was interrupted like so many other things. This year, our proposed plan is actually to expand the offering of this opportunity to all schools in the district. And that expansion is driven by a couple of factors. Number one is the success that our schools had who had tried it prior to the pandemic in terms of having more students demonstrate that they can meet those standards on those assessments. And the second, and perhaps the more salient factor here, is the environment that we're in right now with respect to student performance on state tests. As you all know, scores are now lower than normal, particularly in the area of mathematics, than they were prior to the pandemic. And we know that these scores play a role in a number of things that happen for kids. They are part of a state law that has to do with students having access to advanced mathematics classes in elementary, middle school. They're used for course placement decisions as kids transition to high schools in many cases. And they're also even part of the gateway number 4 for identifying students for AIG in our district. They are never the sole source of information on which placement decisions and access decisions are made for individual students, but they are inevitably part of the mix in many cases. And knowing that those scores are particularly low at this point, and knowing that impacts disproportionately certain subgroups of students in our school district, we really feel like giving kids the opportunity, as Mr. Cook said before, students who are meeting standards in the classroom, who are passing classes, but for whatever reason just didn't do well on that day of the test, having that extra opportunity to be able to get a score that might give them access to some advanced course opportunities and other opportunities that might not be available to them, is just becoming really salient with the pictures that we're seeing post-pandemic. So we know that sometimes these scores play an exaggerated role in a lot of areas of our business, but this is one area that we feel like is particularly important to make sure that all kids are having all available opportunities to get access to those opportunities. As Drew also mentioned earlier, there are some parameters involved that we have to adhere to as a district. Number one, it has to be voluntary. Students and families can be invited to participate, but it is not mandatory, it is not required. There are no consequences for not taking the invitation to participate. It is completely voluntary for students and families. Students must be, as we mentioned, demonstrating mastery in the classroom by way of passing the class or the course that they are in. So at the elementary school level, for example, that means a student has to be earning at least a 3 in the fourth quarter in their class in order to qualify for it. Also, the remediation and the readministration of the tests that is allowable under this policy has to occur after the last day of school. So it's not something that students can do or schools can do in the last few days, maybe after their first round of testing is done. It does have to take place in the days following the last day of school. Also, students, if they do not participate in the remediation component of the plan, they are not technically eligible to be administered the assessment. So they do have to participate in the remediation component in order to be eligible. Among leadership over the last few weeks, there's been a great deal of discussion about the pros and cons of reestablishing this program in the wake of the pandemic, and in addition, expanding it to additional schools. The consensus from the group was that we felt that area superintendents were well positioned to be able to work with schools to come up with a plan that would be viable for them and that would minimize the workload that it might impose on school-based staff. We're very sensitive to the fact that school-based staff have far more to do than they can possibly accomplish at this point, and so that was a big topic of conversation as we were trying to make this decision. Also, the district has been able to make a commitment of funds to support this, such that school-based budgets should not be impacted or that the impact on them will be minimized by virtue of the school being able to pay for things like transportation and child nutrition and extra duty pay for the certified staff who would have to be there on those days in order to operate the program, so that that would not have to come out at the school's expense. This week, a team of area superintendents was pulled together and based on some feedback that we received from principals last week, is crafting up the details of what this is going to look like on more of a school-by-school basis, because we know that a one-size-fits-all solution is not going to necessarily work in every case. Every school is going to have different numbers of students who will choose to take advantage of the program, et cetera. They're in the process of going through all that feedback and coming up with some guidelines that they are going to then put back in front of principals to get additional feedback on. They've pulled together a group of principals that represent all the different calendar types that we have in the district and also all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high. The one pain point we know that we have to deal with is for our multi-track year-round schools, because the way that this program operates is that it has to terminate by July the 8th. And we know that for our tracks 2, 3, and 4 students, that leaves very little time between the last day of school and the opening of the next day of school in order to do something in terms of providing a meaningful opportunity for those students. And so that's one of the things that they're trying to work through this week. And they'll be meeting with principals on Thursday of this week to help come up with some ways to kind of deal with that, and also maybe surface what other challenges maybe need to be out there. But at this point, we do have a deadline of April 1st in order to get this plan to NCDPI for their approval. And since this is your last board meeting prior to April the 1st, in order for us to pursue this planning process and take advantage of the opportunity, it would require you to approve it here tonight in order for us to get it to DPI on time, such that we would have the ability to implement this program at the end of the year if we choose to. So that being said, is there anything else you want to add? Or at this point, we'll just take comments or questions that you may have at this point.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion for this before we move forward? Ms. Carter?
Making a motion to approve.
I second.
Thank you. All right, questions from board members? Ms. Carter?
I just want to thank you. I had asked to have this moved just because I really would like, because in consent, there's not really a light shone on it, and for folks to really understand what it means and what's occurring. And I also appreciate the mention of additional summer programs that will be offered, and more kind of like a to be coming back to us sometime. But I just really think it's important to be as transparent as possible with the community and provide details so they have a better idea of what we actually are doing and putting into place and how they came to be. And I do appreciate that this is being expanded to include all of our schools. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott?
Thank you. And I also requested that this be moved to action.
That's why I sent the email.
So, yeah. But I do have a few questions. how long had we been participating, offering this to schools and Restart Schools? Do you know how many years?
Yeah, I can't give you the exact numbers of schools off the top of my head, but in 2017-18, we started with a small number. I want to say, I know Carroll Middle School was one. There was probably three or four. And then in the 18-19 school year, the last full school year prior to the pandemic, I think it was up closer to 10, and it was mostly because of the addition of the Restart Schools wanting to take advantage of some of their funding flexibility to offer extra remediation outside of the school year. So I believe it was two.
Thank you. And understanding that this is, you might recall one of my first meetings shortly after being sworn in was with the two of you and with Dr. McFarland asking about this very subject, because sometimes we do see students, particularly at schools that have high F&R, they're passing their classes, but we see that EOG, EOC data coming out, and it's difficult. So I'm trying to process that. Is this program, do we see success in that? Because I think oftentimes we understand that standardized testing is a picture of one standard of one day, and if somebody had a rough morning, that day of a test, this is not necessarily going to be the best snapshot of whether or not there is true mastery of whatever material of the subject that's being tested. So when you did have the opportunity, even though it was a very tiny data sample, was there success in offering this, did you see?
If we define success by the number of additional students who meet that standard, yeah, but it did vary by school to some degree. One of the things that we did notice is in the past when schools invited students into the program who, as you mentioned before, were doing well in the classroom and were fairly close to the proficiency standard on the first administration, they were the ones who were more likely to be able to push forward and go from a 2 to a 3 or a 2 to a 4 on that assessment. So those schools tended to have more success on a percentage basis than schools who went ahead and tested all students. So one of the other advantages here is that these are students who are already demonstrating mastery of standards, from their teacher's perspective in the classroom. So presumably that's where you're going to catch a lot of those kids who just had a bad day that day because they've been doing it all year, but then they can't do it on that one day because of whatever reasons it made that day not a good day for them.
Thank you for that.
And Scott, I'll just give you, I crunched the numbers on this myself just to check them. And so the second year of implementation with 10 schools implementing, there were almost 300 additional passing scores. So I just think that those are 300 additional opportunities for a child and a parent to recognize that they did actually pass that end of course or end of grade test. And who knows how, to the extent to which that is replicated across the district and schools, but to provide every child with that opportunity and choice, I think is our obligation.
Absolutely. I mean, I've expressed many times my thoughts on standardized testing and using them to make big policy changes. So I absolutely appreciate hearing that. And understanding, which I am also grateful to hear that we will have additional summer program offerings for our students, but understanding that, of course, we're looking at teachers who've been full-time doing this for quite some time, and I believe we were concerned, how would those be staffed? So if we're looking at especially something that is more complicated, as you mentioned, mathematics, do we have a math teacher? Are we going to put them in this remediation retest program, or would they go into the other program? How are we going to have enough people to do this?
Yeah, great question, Ms. Scott. And I think, first and foremost, I think we all acknowledge and have to recognize it is a lift. It's a significant lift. And, I think the input that the output that Superintendent Moore referenced in terms of the outcomes for students is something that we want to be able to scale and replicate across the district. But it will require some significant work in terms of planning on the part of the principal and the school. I think to your point, there's also details that have to be worked out. Well, we know that capacity is already at its max. And so we're going to have to work with area superintendents, with data research and accountability, the academics office, transportation, to kind of coordinate the logistics, because it is an additional ask. It's an additional task. And I think, we have to be transparent about the lift that's involved, whether we're talking about a math teacher or another teacher in a classroom. We know that that's going to be a challenge that we have to work to overcome. I will say that right now, and I think Superintendent Moore referenced this earlier in the Finance Committee meeting again, we do not plan at this time to implement a summer learning program anywhere near the scale that was implemented and required in alignment with state legislation last summer. So in terms of capacity, we do hope and expect there to be more capacity than there was last summer, in part because the scale and the scope of summer learning as a whole is not going to be on the same size and scale as it was last year.
And I appreciate that, and thank you for highlighting the fact that the summer program last summer was required by legislation. So I do appreciate that. I guess I'm still struggling with having this program along other summer learning opportunities, knowing that our staff is exhausted, knowing that they're limited, and trying to think when you have finite, man hours, when you have finite hours of instruction that's even available, quality instruction. If my child needs to take a math remediation course, I'd prefer it be with a math teacher. And I'm saying this as a music teacher who once had to teach health. So, I mean, it's just, I'm concerned about the details with that. And then the cost, I'm glad that the schools will not be coming out of their individual school budgets, but how will this be financed?
So we're looking at, it's going to be put together from various sources. So there's transportation costs. We believe that there are some savings available in transportation that will allow us to mitigate that cost. The costs associated with staffing, did we come out to is this a place where we're hitting ESSER? Do you know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I can't be certain.
Yeah.
But I think we were looking at identifying other funding sources outside of ESSER.
Yeah, we're looking at savings in different places in the district to try to help us make sure that we do this. We just wanted to make sure that schools knew on the front end that we weren't asking them to come up with funds.
And I understand that. I think I'm just struggling, and please forgive me, and I appreciate you going along my from pond to pond journey with my own ADD as I'm talking and processing all of this. But I guess I just really struggle. We have finite resources. We have finite instructor time available. And I feel like this program, I'm just going to be blunt. Again, I apologize. I feel like this is going to make test scores look better for maybe some kids. And I worry about that finite funding potentially not going to serve more students in a summer program that could be impactful. And that's just my personal concern. I had to share that. So those are the only questions. I thank you very much for the answers for all of that.
One thing that I'll add real quick, Ms. Scott, that may be helpful context, and Dr. McMillan or Superintendent Moore can correct me if I'm wrong. I admit it's my understanding that by the submission of this plan to DPI, that empowers us as a district to implement a retesting and remediation plan. What it doesn't necessarily do is compel us to, as you described, have all the details worked out, and it may be that we still have the latitude to make adjustments in terms of what this looks like across the district. And Brad, if I've misspoken, correct me if I'm wrong. So in other words,
no, you're right.
Submitting the plan doesn't necessarily compel us in any degree of specificity to have to deliver on something that is not necessarily spelled out in that plan. You'll note that it's pretty broad, and it's done that way intentionally.
Yeah, I would just add that it gives us the opportunity to do it, but we are not committed to doing it if for some reason the funds are not available because some emergency situation comes along that drains funds from some other. It just gives us the opportunity to do it.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Thank you.
Ms. Kushner?
Thank you. And will the funding details come back to this board so that we will either as a consent item or as part of the financial report so we can keep track of that?
Some of that stuff could very well be buried in some of the financial stuff you do because you might see some transfers, but we can provide you a summary of where we land because we've still got work to do beyond getting permission to just explore it with the meetings with the principals, the different calendars, trying to work out all of those details is still before us.
I mean, I'm comfortable approving the plan, but I think given the interest at this board level expressed tonight, we would need to, I think we should see the follow-up for the costs
Certainly.
and the more details as you bring them together, Mr. Cook.
And I haven't run this by
Thank
the
you.
superintendent, but I do think it may be reasonable to your question that when we do bring back an update on summer learning, this could easily, I would imagine, be a component that we could come back to you with an update on.
Thank you.
To give you a comprehensive overview of what's being
But I
provided.
certainly think that's a concern of all of us as well as the community, so that we're, and I think really clear with how we're coming out of the last 2 years and out of this school year. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? Ms. Waters?
Thank you. I just had a question in terms of students who you've served in this program in the past and anticipating students who may come through in the future. Have you seen students who may have an IEP, and are there supports in place for students who may need accommodations as they participate in this type of program?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And yes, those students have been part of the program in the past. We're very sensitive to the fact that this offer has to be made to all students, and all students are going to have an opportunity to access this program regardless of whether they have an IEP or not, a disability or not. So many have taken place with the program in the past, and we could bring you a more detailed breakdown of what that looked like in conjunction with sort of a follow-up presentation that Drew was just alluding to give you more detail around that, if that'd be helpful.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right. Seeing no further hands, all those in favor of passing the summer remediation and test readministration plan for summer 2022, please signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the motion passes. We look forward to hearing more about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item, required redistricting of Board of Election districts following the 2020 census and method of electing board members. We have our consultants, Adam Mitchell from Tharrington Smith, and I believe Mr. Esselton is joining us virtually this evening.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, board members, Superintendent Moore. At our special meeting last week, we looked at base option B, and we looked at some modifications to that. There was option B1, which was a modification to the boundary between districts 1 and 3. There was option B2, which dealt with districts 2 and 4. And then there was option B3, which combined both of those together. We wound up at the end of the meeting working on and putting together option B4, which took the 2-4 move and added in a 3-6 move, one precinct. And we preliminarily determined, Blake was able to determine that the population deviations were acceptable under what we called Plan B4. And you asked for some additional analysis. We did that. We uploaded it a few days ago. Blake is here and can just quickly run through that, so you all have seen that and the public can see that. And then happy to discuss, answer any questions, but you are now, in my view, at the position of being ready to adopt a resolution to approve this plan or a different plan. And as you know, per your direction, the resolution also addresses the method of elections issues that we have discussed. So, Blake, can you take it away just with your overview of option B4, please?
I would be happy to. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Excellent. And Julie, if you're able to make the slides visible, we can go past that cover slide, the opening slide. And Adam covered a lot of the text that's on these slides. Basically, what's on this slide is something that Adam has already stated. We did not include the Amendment 1, which would have affected Districts 1 and 3 in the Wake Forest area. Next slide. Amendment 2, as Adam said, involves a change, sort of a swapping of precincts between Districts 2 and 4 compared to what the base option B had. The next slide shows that. And we looked at this slide last week, so this is nothing new, just a reminder of what the components of this option B4 are. So one of them is this amendment involving 2 precincts. Next slide. And then this, what we're calling Amendment 3, the third amendment that was discussed last week, as Adam mentioned, this is a single precinct that would go from District 3 in base option B into District 6. I'm sorry, it would go into
Reverse.
District 3 from, yes, into District 3 from District 6. And it is just that one precinct and no other districts are affected. The next slide shows a map of this. This is in the Six Forks Road, Falls of Neuse Road area near Cedar Hills Park. And the two sides of this image are representative of how it's different. You can see that the image on the left, more of it is taken up with District 6, and that is the precinct area that which on the right becomes part of the orange in District 3. That is the precinct, the sole precinct that it would be affected in this amendment. The next slide, please. Again, this is reiterating what Adam said. B4 incorporates these two amendments, which means a total of 4 districts affected and 3 precincts as compared to the base option B. Next slide. This information was some of the information that was not immediately available at the last meeting, but was made available last week. And you can see here that, as Adam said, at the bottom of the slide, you can see the 4 districts whose statistics change as a result of these amendments. And the 5th column, which is the most important column for satisfying the one person, one vote piece of this, is that all of the districts continue to be within the plus or minus 5%, which is the allowable deviation. Included in these slides, if we go to the next slide, were maps that had been provided for the other previously proposed options, which basically show how these district boundaries overlay on the high school base attendance areas. And the following slide shows how they overlay on the current municipal incorporated areas. The final slide is just a reminder about the interactive map that is available on the web for anyone to use and explore this. And it now includes option B4. And this allows you to zoom in and see where the districts fall in more detail and turn other layers on and off as the board is aware. So that's the very quick overview. And as Adam said, we're happy to entertain any questions or further discussion.
Is there anyone with questions at this point? Okay, Ms. Waters.
Since I'm new to this conversation, I just had a question, and I know it's keeping in mind trying to keep municipalities together and keeping Varner together. I was just looking at sort of the change that is proposed for District 4 and the shift of about 4,000 people to go to District 2. Am I correct? And so I was just wondering, I know that you talked about having looked at a lot of different sources, different experts, and different software to sort of compare, and some of them had some differences. I was just wondering, was this the least change in population that could accomplish Garner being all in one district? If that question makes sense.
Wow.
I think without splitting a precinct, right?
Right. That was my point.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, that change, Ms. Waters, and nice to meet you and welcome, was board driven. It was not something that was on the original plan, and I know it was talked about at length, and there were some very solid rationales for it. So that's where we are on that. And yeah, I think not splitting the precinct is, we all of the plans we put forward, and frankly, I'm proud of this, and Blake should be, did not split any precincts. And that's really a good government, good elections, public service type of mindset that I think you all brought to this. And that was an important factor.
Any other questions at this point? All right. We have a resolution that was drafted.
You do, and so
All right.
I would say that a motion would be in order to approve the resolution, which adopts option B4 as the school district's redistricting plan following the 2020 census and making certain recommendations to the Wake County Board of Elections as indicated in the resolution.
And Mr. Blumberg, I'm going to assume that since it's about 4 pages of text, we don't have to read it into the record as it is attached to the record in Simply, correct?
I think a motion, second, and approval is adequate. Thank you.
Excellent. We will now take, is there a motion to approve the resolution adopting new election district boundaries and making suggestions to the Board of Elections regarding the method of electing board members?
Chair Mahaffey, I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution adopting new election district boundaries and making suggestions to the Board of Elections regarding the method of electing board members.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Haggerty, a second by Ms. Kushner. Is there any discussion or questions moving forward? Ms. Carter.
All right, so, I voiced my concern last time. I'm still here with my concern, and I guess because I've not heard from other than one constituent in D4 about these. So I'm just trying to be, since you're here now at the table, because last time my thing was you weren't here yet. And I just want to make sure moving forward, because like you mentioned, that's what I had mentioned too, about over 4,000 folks being pulled from D4 to D2. And then also I had asked last time to go over what they had looked at, because taking into growth consideration was part of our stuff too, and they had looked at multiple sources, and based on that, well, I don't know how to word it, you can maybe speak to that, but it wasn't, because they had mentioned that in one of the slides at our last meeting, about taking that many folks from D4 because it was a lower growth expected based on like watershed information, meeting with Wake County planning departments, building permits have been, and all of that. So I know we're going over all that again, but because you weren't here, I wanted to make sure, because for me, I've not heard from folks, like I said, other than one. So for me, it's a concern because I feel like that's a good number. And then so I just want to, that's where I'm still at, and I'd love to hear,
So I think from our perspective, so accounting for future growth was a criteria that the board favored. It's an optional criteria. It's absolutely not required by law, but there's some good reasons to consider it. And so we were given guidance to do that. But there are a whole lot of other criteria as well, including keeping precincts whole, keeping municipalities whole. And so it's inevitable that there are going to be times when there are tension between certain of the criteria. Taking into account future growth and keeping municipalities whole can certainly be two criteria that may be in some tension. And then honestly, it's the board's judgment to try to weigh those out and to make a call. So I think you're never going to be able to follow all of your criteria perfectly. It's just not possible. And I think we've all done our absolute best, and I feel really good about where you're at, but there's certainly going to be trade-offs.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Waters.
So then, may I ask the question in terms of looking at projected population? Is there a sort of a ranking between the 9 districts of which are supposed to grow at the fastest rate? And if so, where does District 4 fall on that list? And if that doesn't exist?
No, it does. We'd be going back several PowerPoints, and I'm not sure how quickly we could pull them up, but we did present a number of graphics that showed growth patterns. I don't believe that District 4, and Blake, you may be able to pull this up and at least answer the question in a little bit more detail. I don't believe District 4 was a high expected growth area. Chair Mahaffey's district, I know, is. So we do have that information.
I was just asking Ms. Waters to hit the button because
Okay.
I was trying not to interrupt,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I think District 4 was not expected to be a high-growth area, and the more specific data and graphics is in our earlier PowerPoints that we presented to the board.
Further questions? Ms. Cash?
So I do appreciate the work you've done when we looked at the no growth in D3, and thank you, Ms. Kushner, for talking with me on this as far as the 143. I appreciate the fact that the no growth of District 3 was this will help in that respect. And just to clarify to the public, I know there's been some questions about the border, but I think what this board has been really good about doing at this time is to keep the municipalities intact as best we can. And District 3, the way it is configured now, may look a little different, but it's very good about keeping a municipality intact.
Any further questions or comments? Okay. All right. All of those in favor of adopting this resolution and the suggestions to the Board of Elections regarding the method of election, please signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right. Motion passes. One nay? Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I will entertain a motion to enter into closed session.
So, Chair Mahaffey, I would like to move at this time that the board move into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under General Statute 143-318.11 A1, A3, and A6, and also to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in General Statute 143-318.11 A3.
All right. We have a motion and a second from Ms. Kushner. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by sign of aye. Any opposed, nay? We are now in closed session. Thank you.